You guys are about to do your adulting presentations, and so I wanted to go over a couple of things that you can keep in mind while you are presenting. Um, so basically, you want to keep in mind two different parts: your body language and then also your verbal communication. So when you're doing your body language, of course, the number one thing is your eye contact. When you're trying to have eye contact, um, you don't want to freak everybody out and like look directly into their eyes, but you can coast the top of their heads. You can look to the back of the room. Try not to stay or too close to yourself at the floor because then it doesn't really seem like eye contact. You also don't want to ignore one half of the room over the other, so try to look up in different places at different times. I would also say that you can definitely have note cards, but make sure that those note cards aren't something that you have to read directly off of for most of the time. Because if you just glance up every once in a while, it still doesn't really feel like eye contact. It feels like you're trying to make eye contact and not succeeding. And something that goes with that is your posture and making sure where you're positioning your body. A lot of people lose points at eye contact because their entire body is thrown off. Those of you guys who play sports know that where you point your feet is where everything else is going to go. If you throw the ball and your feet are pointing over here, that's where the ball is going to go. If you are pointing your feet at the side of the room and not the back of the room, then that's where your body's going to go. That's where your head's going to go. That's where your eyes are going to go. You do not want to be staring at the wall that's behind me instead of at the back of the room where your audience is. And so you'll want to make sure that you are not relying on your slides. The slides are there not to be your visual aid, but to be your audience's visual aid. That means that you should not be reading off of your slides. You can glance back at your slides to make sure that you've hit everything, especially if you've got a picture, you can, point to it and that sort of thing. But this should not be something that you are having to turn and read off behind you. See how distracting it is to not even have me looking at you because I'm trying to mimic what I see so many students do. Practice what you're going to say so that you don't have to rely on your slides. To that end, some students try to say exactly what is on their slides. Again, it's an aid. It's not verbatim, word for word, what you should be saying. You should be elaborating, giving specific examples, explaining what is on your slides instead of having to just say it exactly. What usually happens then is your audience either gets confused because you're leaving out some words that are sort of on there or not, or they're busy trying to read all of this information while you're also talking. It's like when teachers try to give you notes that you need to write down while they're talking, and your brain usually only does one of those things really well. So you're either listening and not paying attention to all what you're reading on the screen and you're just copying it down mindlessly, or you're paying attention to what you're writing down and you miss something that the teacher has said. Don't do that to your audience. You don't like when people do it for you. um, with that also, I would say pay attention to your hand gestures. Some people say that you should always have your hands down at your side, very stiff, and I think that looks unnatural. Talking with your hands, I do that a lot because it can visually engage your audience to be paying attention to what's going on. You do want to make sure that your hands aren't doing something that you're not aware of, though. For some people, it's like the hair flip all the time that they don't realize that they do that. Or if you have something on your neck, you might end up playing with it. Your note cards, you might, flap them against your hands or something. I've given this example before that I've literally had students clap the whole time and they had no idea that they were doing it. So just make sure that you're aware of your body movements if you're using them. For your verbal part of your presentation, this means everything having to do with your voice. Of course, you want to be clear. You want to speak slowly enough that we can understand you. Some of you guys are natural fast talkers. I get it. So am I. Just make sure that we can still understand what it is you're saying. Some of the words that you say you might not know the full pronunciation of. Please find that out and practice saying it before you go up there. Since you are aware of what you're going to need to be saying ahead of time, you should practice these pronunciations. But if you mess something up, if you stumble, don't draw attention to your mistakes because you might have an audience that doesn't really pay attention to that fine detail. They might not have realized what you said, that it was wrong. You can just correct yourself. So say I stumbled and then I just keep going. Okay. I don't know if that was a good example there, but if you say, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, or oh gosh, then all of a sudden we now realize that you made a big mistake and you're taking our focus away from your presentation, whereas normally we would have probably been able to move on as well without noticing that. So while you're presenting, speaking, make sure that you're aware of what you're doing, but also when your group members are speaking, make sure that you're still aware that you're up in front of the rest of the class. So try to model how the rest of the class should be paying attention. That means look at the person who is speaking from your group, or still be engaged and focused. You should not look totally zoned out until it's your turn to speak. At the end of your presentations, there will be a time for question and answers. You will do your best to answer some of the questions that students have, but otherwise I will more than happily chime in. Once we do question and answer session, I will not be evaluating your performance as far as how you're standing or how you're speaking. That part will just be for people's knowledge. I'm really excited to see all of your presentations this week.